Welcome to the Weekly Spanish Review. This is for Mr. Jones's class, Spanish 2. We finished the first 9 weeks. We finished the first quarter. I hope everyone's enjoyed their Spanish class so far and that they learned a lot. In today's video, we're going to go over everything that we've done up to this point. Now, before I get started on Chapter 5 and the sports vocabulary that we learned, I want to talk a little bit about last year and Spanish 1. So last year we learned the verb ser, like I am, you are, yo soy, tú eres. We've used that in a lot of our activities this year. We also learned tener, like yo tengo, tú tienes. So ser and tener are important to have. We've used those in a lot of activities throughout the year. Just wanted to mention that quickly before I talk about Chapter 5. So in our unit about deportes, I wanted you to remember a lot of the different sports like el béisbol, baloncesto, el tenis. Words like equipo, cancha, campo de béisbol, la pelota, el balón, el partido, jugador, lanzador, portero, and aficionado. A really important part of this class, and also learning Spanish in general, is learning how to conjugate verbs. We've seen verbs that end in AR, ER, and IR, and this quarter we learned how to conjugate them. Some of the verbs that we learned in Chapter 5 about sports was lanzar, to throw, correr, to run, dormir, to sleep, pensar, to think, preferir, to prefer, marcar, to score, ganar, to win, and perder, to lose. I'll go through conjugations pretty quickly, but if you need help, remember to go back in Google Classroom and look at some of the previous lessons and previous videos. But for this verb like lanzar, remember how we changed the endings on the end. So like to say, I throw, yo lanzo, and then so forth. Those are our conjugations. Tú lanzas, él lanza, nosotros lanzamos, ellos lanzan. For marcar, that's another AR verb that would have the same endings. For correr, we would have yo corro, tú corres, él, ella, usted corre, nosotros corremos, ellos, ustedes corren. Just a few examples of how to conjugate our verbs. And then finally in Chapter 5, we learned likes and dislikes. Me gusta, te gusta, nos gusta. We also learned preferir, like yo prefiero, tú prefieres. Me interesa, te interesa. A quick look at Chapter 6 and some of the vocab. We saw that it was feelings in the doctor's office. We have words like alegre, triste, enojado, nervioso, la conducta, terco, los modales, la salud, la receta, el médico, una tos, la farmacia, la consulta, la sonrisa, la cara. We learn new verbs like to sell, vender, to prescribe, recetar, to examine, examinar, and then ser and estar. Remember our differences between ser and estar that we'll talk about in just a second. So we learned the main difference between ser and estar is that ser is permanent and estar is temporary. We could use ser for an a character trait like yo soy alto. Estar maybe for a temporary feeling, like in the moment. Yo estoy alegre. Tú estás alegre. Tú estás triste. We also learned how to use me, te, le, nos, and les. I like sports. Me gustan los deportes. The doctor prescribes you medicine. El médico te receta medicina. The professor talks to us. El profesor nos habla. And then finally, a really important thing that we learned this year is about culture, about geography of Latin American countries and Spanish-speaking countries. We learned that there are 6 Spanish-speaking countries in Central America. We also learned about some of their capitals, as well as all the other capitals of Latin American countries. We saw that there's 9 Spanish-speaking countries in South America, 1 in North America, which is Mexico. The 3 Caribbean islands that speak Spanish are Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. And then Europe, Spain and Europe speak Spanish. We also learned that in the United States, there are more than 50 million Spanish speakers. If you take into account the total population of the United States, it's almost 1 in 7 people speak Spanish. So it's really important for us to learn and continue learning Spanish this year. So just to recap, by now, Spanish 2 students, you should know a lot of the different verbs. You should know how to conjugate them in the present tense. We should know our sports vocabulary, our doctor's vocabulary, and then culture about Latin America. A few notes as we start the second quarter. Remember to study your vocabulary for at least 5 minutes every night. You can do that with the copy that I gave you in class, or for Columbia Homeroom students, that's in Google Classroom. And everyone can look at it in Google Classroom. There's also Quizlet notes. You can study with the flashcards. So study for 5 minutes every night and your Spanish will really improve. Also try Duolingo on your own. That's a great app to learn Spanish. And if you ever have any questions, remember to email me. You can ask me questions. So a great first 9 weeks, and let's have another great second quarter.